everyone, welcome to today's pour. I'm Caven and I'm going to be doing a flip cup today. Let's get started. These are the colours that I'm going to be using for today's pour, all from the Eraldo di Paolo range and bought from Riot online. White, black, the grey was made from a mixture of the white and the black, and this is the deep sea with a touch of this black in it to darken it up a little bit. I've also added some of this pearl pigment from the paper mill. This one's called Macro Pearl, and I put it into the white. Into the black I've added this powdered pigment, and this one is called Diamond. And into the green I've added this one, and this one is called Palm Green. The consistency of the paint today is once again not too thick, not too thin, just like that warm honey that we always hear about. Just pours nicely, leaves a slight mound and a little bit of a trace. I've added into my paints just a couple of small drops of this diluted dishwashing liquid. I've mentioned before that I read somewhere that it helps to break the surface tension of the paint and so helps the bubbles to pop. I've also added in about a tablespoon of this Holcroft Professional Gel Medium Gloss. With this and the pouring medium that I use, which contains PVA, you get a lovely glossy finish rather than that dull, disappointing finish that you sometimes get. My pouring medium, as always, made by myself, 50% PVA, 25% water, 25% Floetrol. The OGX coconut milk, it has dimethicone in it rather than silicone. It makes beautiful cells and it also smells absolutely divine. I just put a couple of drops into each of my colours. You may need to add a little bit of water into your paint to make it into the correct consistency. I've already prepared my paper for today's pour. I'm using the synthetic paper, which is just like Yupo paper. It's from the paper mill, and of course I buy it from Riot. It's A3 size, 200 GSM, and it takes the acrylic paint beautifully and holds the weight of it. As always, tape the edges nice and securely so that the paint doesn't get in under the edges when you pour it. Makes for a nice clean pour, and it will help to keep the back clean as well. Make sure you run your fingers over it securely along the edges to stop the paint from seeping under. I'm just using normal masking tape and an old piece of aluminium that I've used before, obviously. You'll need something to back the paper because the paper is flexible, of course. You can use board, you can use very stiff cardboard, a piece of perspex, even a piece of glass. I'm going to do a flip cup today, like I mentioned earlier. I'm going to do what they call a dirty pour, which means that I'm going to pour my paints from reasonably high up. So maybe, up here. It means that the paint in the cup will go down and mix with the rest of the paint. So it doesn't really matter what order that you put your paint into the cup. We're ready to flip now. Ready, set, go. Now you can see that some of it blurched out, but that's okay. It's very pretty. Look at all these lovely cells. The greens showing up nicely. The greys showing up nicely. The white cells are really popping. I'm just going to let it sit for a couple of minutes, just to let all of the paint come down. Okay, it's time to see what we've got. This is the exciting part. You never quite know what you're going to get from a flip cup until you open the cup. perfect for what I've got in mind for this particular pour. Some lovely cells. The green is not too overpowering. The black and the grey is showing through nicely. Just letting the rest of it come through here. Don't want to waste any. Okay. Pop that in the water so that I can use it again. Look at all those lovely cells. I'll see if I can bring you closer, just so that you can have a look before I do any torching or tilting and stretching. So, now it's time to tilt. The two sides are, of course, closer because it's an A3 size paper. Just try to bring the paint back to the middle after each tilt, down to that edge and back to the middle again. I'm going to try to go right down to this side now, and then I might bring it back to the middle and we'll have a look at doing the corners. Okay, keep the weight of the paint. The weight of the paint should be more or less in the middle so that you've got most of the paint here to move when you move from side to side. Sometimes the corners can be the most difficult to reach, so you do need to make sure you have enough paint to get into the corners. I'm just going to help it out a little bit here with some of the paint. And we'll just slide it into that corner there. Back to the middle. And now we're going to go down into this corner here. I'm going to just scrape a little bit of this paint just to help it out a little bit. It's already gone over the edge here, so it doesn't really matter. What I'm doing is I'm just giving it a little bit of paint to slide on, so it can get into that corner just a little bit more easily. And rather than rolling over on itself, it will now glide. All right, back to the middle again. I'm going to take it down to this far corner now. It's still moving nicely, so we've got plenty of paint here. Once again, just going to help it out just a little bit to get to that corner. There it goes. Back to the middle. And down into this final corner now, this one down here. Just helping it out to get into the corner a little bit. Okay, and back to the middle a bit. Now, having a look at this composition that we've got here, I'd like to see if I could try to bring some of this white down this way, just a little bit. So let's see if we can tip it this way and move some of the action down that way a bit. This is particularly nice, these green and white cells here. I might just change the angle because the reflection from the window is getting in the way a little bit. All right, let's have a look at it now. I think I'm really happy with that. As I said, I have something particular in mind for this pour, and I think this is going to be just perfect. I'm going to torch now. This is my torch, just bought from Bunnings. As always, be very, very careful with your gas torch. Just popping some bubbles and bringing up a few more little cells. Look at them, they're coming up beautifully. Lots and lots of little cells coming up in it, which will make it very interesting. A really nice composition for what I have in mind for it. Don't leave your torch too long in the one place. You might burn your paint. Just keep it moving gently over the surface. That's enough torching for now. I can see lots and lots of little cells starting to pop up around here. Lots of them in the white areas, some of them also in the grey and coming up through the green. Now I know it doesn't look particularly interesting at the moment, but when it's dry I'm going to do some embellishments. And here's the dry result. It's going to be absolutely perfect for what I have in mind. I just wanted to show you that I also managed to pull some nice skins when I cut it off the aluminium backing that I used. So now I'm going to start embellishing it, and let's see what happens. I just thought I'd show you how it's looking. I'm about halfway through doing the outlining for the rocks and the negative black space in the background. I've done all the outlines of the rocks in black now and also filled in some of the negative space. I'm just going to let the ink dry for a little while, and then I'll probably come back and just go over the lines again to darken them up. And then we'll be ready to add some shading to make them look more three-dimensional. First of all, I need to work out which direction the light source is going to be coming from. Because I have such strong white areas here, then I think I will make the light source come from this direction. So if the light source is coming from this direction and it's going this way, that means that the tops of the stones will be lighter and the bottoms of the stones, which will be in more shadow, will be a darker colour. I'm going to use the same pen that I used for the outlines of the rocks to now add a little bit of shading on this side of the rocks. I'm just going to take my pen, put a little bit of colour along there like that, dip my brush into some water, and it's a little bit like doing watercolours. Just put that little dark area along the line. Just kind of use your brush backwards and forwards until you're happy that you've got enough shadow on that side. There. Can you see a difference? If you need more shadow, you can just let it dry and then come back and do the same thing once again. I've done most of the dark shading on the bottom right hand side of the rocks. Now I'm going to do the light shading. So once again, I'm just going to put down some white colour. Then I'm going to use my brush dipped in water to make the lighter side of the rocks. I don't want it to be too white, just enough so that we can see that that's where the light source is coming from. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. There's a bit of glare on it, so I'll just tilt it a little bit so you can see the top edge. I actually decided to add a little bit more negative space at the top because it seemed a little cluttered. So I've added in these spaces here, and I also added in a little bit more down the side as well. So what do you guys think? I'd love you to let me know in the comments below.